Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrael Hawkins. We've got opioid deaths today, missile threats, and of course, doomsday is looming in the air as well. These are just some of the topics we have for today's broadcast, but we're going to start off with a little bit of the opioid increase. Well, with the increase in opioid use and deaths, there comes an increase in needles used by users of the drug to shoot up. And those needles, as a result, are popping up in places you'd least expect it. According to the CDC, heroin-related deaths have quadrupled. As a result, more needles have been turning up in places like our shorelines and in neighboring areas where people who don't even use the drugs could easily become infected by bloodborne diseases through accidental contact with those used needles.
In Lowell, Massachusetts, it's easy to see just how grand the problem is. Rocky Morrison, a project manager with Clean River, said the hypodermic needles are found just about every day, and we're like, what's going on here? Now, Mr. Morrison has been cleaning the Merrimack River for the past 15 years and said that in the last 4 years, needles showing up have increased, but in the last 2 years, the numbers have been staggering.
It's just a continual increase. And that's what we're seeing with the opioid use as well, is the numbers are just continually going up. Well, he said also that part of the problem lies with homeless camps. Since these camps are by water, needles usually end up getting dumped into the river and eventually washed back up on shore, sometimes even making it all the way to the ocean. One concerned father out with his 6-year-old child at the beach was shocked to find out that his child was just a mere few yards from a used hypodermic needle. One business owner on Plum Beach said needles were never a problem before. More often, he said, people are finding them and disposing of them out of concern for safety.
Massachusetts and New Hampshire are the fastest growing states in this epidemic. They're not alone, as San Francisco is also facing this epidemic with 2,900 needles found in March of 2016 and an increase to 13,000 in March of 2017. Quite an increase for 1 year. Now, children are the biggest concern for diseases. Just south of San Francisco in Santa Cruz, an 11-year-old girl stepped on a needle while in a swimming pool.
Amazing. Well, just as a side note, in 2015, 11.5 million Americans abused prescription opioids, resulting in 52,000 deaths, an all-time record, by the way. Authorities, though, even as high as that number was, expect that number to rise. Some blame needle exchange programs for handing out needles to prevent diseases from being spread from needle sharing. But the question begs to be answered. If handing out needles helps to stop one epidemic, how do we prevent it from creating another?
Well, needles aren't the only thing to be concerned about at the beaches. On a seemingly normal day at the beach in Galveston, Texas, Brian Parrott attended a family gathering taking his granddaughter to a Galveston beach on a Sunday. His short time spent in the water not only brought with it fun, but also a flesh-eating virus. Parrott is diabetic and may have had a scratch on his foot, so the conditions were right.
Donna Daly, Parrott's mother, said she was surprised by how fast things happen. You go swimming with your family on Sunday, you go to work on Monday, you have a red leg on Tuesday, Wednesday you have boils on your legs, Thursday you lose your leg. Well, 50-year-old father of 3 who works as a security guard had to have his leg amputated from the knee down, leaving him unable to return to his job. He also had a second surgery not too long after the first one, resulting in his amputation because that same leg started to swell.
And that really is a fast progression.
Very fast, very fast.
Well, the family wanted to share his story because they said there were no warning signs at the beach, and Parrot's mother said, "We can't do anything for our son, but maybe we can help someone else."
Well, Palm Beach also had its beaches closed due to high levels of bacteria. You can't see it, but it is in the water. Now, what type of bacteria, you might ask? The kind you find coming from the intestines of a warm-blooded animal. I also wonder if it's warm-blooded people as well. The health department made the discovery after getting results from biweekly tests from area beaches.
Oh, Tim O'Connor, a spokesman for the Department of Health, said that the bacteria could be a result of a cruise ship dumping or from a freightliner or warm-blooded animal. Now, even though lifeguards posted no swim signs, some people missed those signs and ended up taking a dip in the waters only to have to be chased out by attending lifeguards. So it's almost like life-threatening that they're taking a dip in the water and they're having to be run out.
Yeah, and the troubling thing about that in that report that the health department spokesman said that this could actually be from a cruise ship dumping,
Obviously waste.
Yeah, waste into the water because the sea life have been doing that for years without any problem. So it's obviously increasing the levels of bacteria in the ocean to a very dangerous level. Well, that's not it on bacteria at a beach. A woman in Chapel Hill Medical Hospital is receiving around-the-clock care after contracting a flesh-eating bug. Yes, another one, while vacationing at Myrtle Beach. Doctors nor the health department have confirmed how this woman contracted the infection. The woman's family said that she cut her leg sometime during the vacation and got the infection after spending time in the ocean not far from the city's convention center.
Well, the woman got sick on Saturday, went to the hospital on Sunday, and was later flown to Chapel Hill. And doctors are trying to save as much of the woman's leg as possible and prevent the infection from spreading to the rest of her body.
So what's all the stink about bacteria at the beaches? Well, a recent study showed that fecal coliform, that's right, fecal coliform, lurks not only in the water but also in the sand as well. Tao Yan, an associate professor of civil and environmental engineering at the University of Hawaii, said some of the fecal bacteria could live longer in beach sand than in seawater. The professor and colleagues tested various beaches in Hawaii and found that fecal bacteria was higher in the sand than the water. That, he said, because it's easily dispersed in the ocean waves, the waters in the ocean, than it is in the sand, where it takes a very long time for it to degrade.
Well, Professor Yan said that if you go to the beach and see a sign that says the beach is closed due to contamination, you should probably refrain from playing in the sand, which he continued, I often see people doing that. So they might not be going in the water, but they're still playing in the sand, which is now being proven just to be as unsafe as the water.
Yeah, basically a toilet by the ocean is what you're playing in. And you know what's scary about that is because when you think about beaches, you think about children digging in the beaches, digging in the sand, making little sand castles, and they're just, that's all over their face,
and
all over their...
Everybody's barefooted
and laying down in it. So, there's definitely an opportunity for a lot of sickness if the conditions were right when you combine that coliform and people. Well, with more trouble in the Korean Peninsula, Larry McGee has been following the latest for us concerning the DPRK. Larry, what are the most recent developments there in Korea?
Unanimous sanctions issued by the UN Security Council restricting the ability of North Korea to sell abroad to the UN's member states in industries such as food and metals. The move is intended to deliver a financial blow to the nation estimated at around $1 billion per year, with the expectation of additional restrictions on travel and foreign investment to be imposed as well. The measure is reported to have been drafted by the U.S. as a countermove to North Korea's recent missile test Moscow has gone on record in support of the matter, reportedly stating that the sanctions were needed to make North Korea stop its program, but that the measures should be a starting point for dialogue with the nation and not an end in and of themselves. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, stated that the move is about stopping the talk and starting the action, and Pyongyang needs to take heed that the international community has spoken with one voice and that they have the option to stop what they are doing. They have the option of stopping the reckless and irresponsible behavior. And the international community, she stated, could not have made a stronger point that the time to stop is now, and they are prepared to continue on if they have to. As a show of intention in that regard, the Pentagon has now publicly expressed an intention to help Seoul arm its missiles with larger warheads. The action is said to be in response to threats recently made by the head of the DPRK, Kim Jong-un, who is vowing revenge 1,000-fold on the U.S., whom he says North Korea will teach a severe lesson. There are questions on the part of analysts as to how effective the sanctions might ultimately be, but on the issue of whether or not North Korea could actually strike the American homeland, and if Mr. Un is serious in his threats, Lieutenant General Tom McInerney says the leader doesn't have the capability right now, but within a year, yes, so the U.S. needs to take him seriously. He went on to say that, secondly, he doesn't think that the North Korean head really understands what he has said, and what he would tell him is, Mr. Kim Jong-un, if one round of artillery goes into Seoul, South Korea, you will get our full nuclear retaliatory capability. There will not be a city left in North Korea. You will be finished. It is not just South Korea which has to be concerned, however. The DPRK is also threatening to lash out at the U.S. territory of Guam after provocative comments issued by the president promising fire and fury on the nation like the world has never seen. That statement itself is believed to have been influenced by a report recently released by the Washington Post, citing U.S. Defense Intelligence as having knowledge that North Korea has developed a nuclear warhead small enough to fit inside a missile. It is also estimated that the nation's nuclear arsenal, they said, is numbered at 90 weapons, which is an increase over what was previously suspected. There was not much reportedly presented to substantiate the article, but it was widely circulated nonetheless. Along with that, however, there has been military intensification on behalf of both parties, with allied drills on behalf of the U.S. and its partners, and continued missile tests by Pyongyang. Amid all the back and forth, the international community, including China and Russia, have been calling for both nations to calm down and seek a political solution to the crisis. Both New Zealand and Australia have expressed disapproval for President Trump's remarks as well. Former CIA operatives like Jack Rice have also chimed in, saying this cannot be an ego fight, and right now what it felt like is a fight with President Trump on one side and Kim Jong-un on the other, trying to see who can make more outlandish statements. And the fear, he says, is that someone is going to flinch and there could be hundreds of thousands of dead people here. He says this is a very real fight. It is shockingly dangerous. And the last thing we need to do is to stand there and start bumping chests and talking about who is the bigger man. Despite those words of caution, the fire has continued to blaze, stoked this week by Senator Lindsey Graham of the U.S.'s Armed Services Committee, following comments made by Senator John McCain that great leaders do not threaten unless they are prepared to act. Senator Graham was asked this week if he believed the U.S. was ready to take action. To that, the committee member responded absolutely, citing two examples where America would go to war. One, he says, was if North Korea attacked Guam or any other U.S. interest or ally. And the second is if Pyongyang continues to try and develop an ICBM with the nuclear weapon on top that could hit the U.S. homeland. President Trump, he says, has basically drawn a red line, saying that he will never allow North Korea to have an ICBM missile. He's not going to let that happen. He's not going to contain the threat, he says. He's going to stop the threat. The options implied in that warning hold dire implications, however, so analysts asked the senator outright concerning the probable retaliation against South Korea and the potential for heavy casualties. To that, Senator Graham says that General Mathis described it very well. It will be a horrific war, and unfortunately, he says, the U.S. is headed that way. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, continuing, Katan, with what Larry was explaining with the situation with North Korea, as if the fire and fury comments weren't enough, President Trump followed his statements with a bold tweet saying military solutions are now fully in place, locked and loaded should North Korea act unwisely. Hopefully, Kim Jong-un will find another path. Now, with the idea that North Korea could very possibly arm a missile with a nuclear warhead and hit the U.S. mainland, as reality, both sides have clearly upped the rhetoric.
But the talk gives the worst possible scenario in which U.S. is hit by a nuclear bomb, and then North Korea is in turn wiped off the map, with surrounding countries left suffering as a result of the United States retaliation. Well, there are several more likely scenarios that could take place, however, though.
Well, President Kim has threatened to send 4 missiles towards Guam, where the U.S. has 4,000 troops stationed. The small Pacific island is only 2,100 miles away from the Korean peninsula and can easily be reached by the Norse Musudan and KN-14 missiles. Now, to this, President Trump has said, referring to Kim Jong-un, if he does something in Guam, it will be an event the likes of which nobody's seen before what will happen in North Korea. And, Larry mentioned that also, but extremely, extremely powerful words there against North Korea.
Yeah. But even an even closer option and more realistic would be for the North to attack Japan or South Korea. This, of course, would be absolutely devastating. Tokyo has nearly 14 million people, Seoul almost 10 million, and with 40,000 U.S. troops stationed in Japan and almost 35,000 in South Korea, there isn't an outcome where a nuclear strike will make winners of either side.
Well, all of this focuses on missile capabilities, but doesn't pay attention to the fact that the North Korean army is well equipped with enough artillery to seriously hurt the South Korean capital of Seoul and its population before American or South Korean air forces could retaliate.
President Donald Trump is not only standing behind his statements to pay back North Korea for any aggression it may display, he is also continuing to call on China for assistance, seeing them as capable of helping the situation by applying more pressure on the North. He alludes to the fact that if there was more cooperation from China, then he would push for better trade deals with the country as well.
However, China hasn't been uncooperative either, agreeing with the tough sanctions placed on North Korea by the UN Security Council. They did not make friends with their neighbor, and China wants the U.S. to stop connecting them as strong trade partners with the North. Now, it is unclear what the U.S. wants China to do more, quote, of, or if North Korea will even listen.
The Chinese, of course, have different interests than the United States. They are not looking to simply make the U.S. happy by being a mediator. In fact, they continue to encourage U.S. leaders to talk to the North themselves in order to solve their problems. While China doesn't want North Korea to have nuclear weapons, they also don't want the country to collapse.
And if that were to take place, there would be much instability on the Korean peninsula, causing a refugee crisis along the 900-mile border they share with the North, and even worse, an all-out war. Now, knowing that the South Korean and U.S. forces would likely win such a war, creating a unified North and South could bring U.S. troops right along China's border. So a lot of different scenarios, and everybody's considering the outcome and what the different situations would, how they would come about and what would be the result of them.
Right. Well, that's not something China wants. So China's approach is how do we keep this from getting out of hand? How can we end the weapons program but not in the North-South dynamic that currently exists on the Korean Peninsula.
As if all that wasn't enough on the dilemma, the U.S. has gone forward with a planned naval exercise, sending one of its own destroyers into Chinese waters. Of course, this has caused quite a stir with the Chinese government, who has said they strongly oppose the exercise, saying it is violating their sovereignty, and they are taking up the issue with Washington.
While the Freedom of Navigation exercise, as it is called, was an openly planned and announced drill, it couldn't have come at a worse time. Just as the U.S. President and other leaders like Senator Lindsey Graham are calling on China to, quote, do more to help with the North Korean issue.
As we pointed out earlier, while the White House focuses on the nuclear capabilities of the North, China is more concerned with an easier card Kim Jong-un could play. If you think about how fast 30 seconds is, Katan, obviously not very long, that's all the time it would take for the DPRK to hit Seoul with its conventional weapons, just 30 seconds.
Wow. Even though the focus is on Kim's threat to send missiles to Guam, it would be so much easier for him to start shelling across the demilitarized zone that serves as a border or a barrier between North and South Korea, known as the DMZ for short. But what kind of damage could be done?
Well, with 15 military bases around Seoul and almost 35,000 U.S. service members and their families stationed there, not to mention the nearly 10 million residents of Seoul itself, it is a prime target that Kim Jong-un could inflict mass casualties on.
Well, looking at those numbers in perspective, Jeff, Tokyo has just over 9 million people, and New York City has 8.5 million people, so Seoul is actually one of the most densely populated cities in the entire world. The reality of the situation is that even if North Korea chooses to shoot just one shell over the DMZ, there would be no doubt mass casualties in the thousands.
Right. Well, some Americans are questioning the sanity of this standoff between the United States and North Korea. Larry King recently interviewed former U.S. Representative David Jolly, a Republican from Florida, who does not agree with the president's fire and fury threats, as well as other aggressive statements.
So when asked if we are going to have another Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Jolly said, those messages conflict with what our Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has been trying to accomplish when he talks about a peaceful negotiation, suggesting we don't want regime change.
Admittedly, Jolly says no U.S. president in history has had to deal with the North having this kind of nuclear capability up until now. But he told King the only military solution should we end up in that situation is shock and awe like we saw in Iraq, which would really obliterate North Korea. And I think that would be the worst solution for the world, which is why we do need to reach a peaceful solution.
That's right.
Well, Katan, I think we all could agree with what Mr. David Jolly said. We do need to reach a peaceful solution before it's too late. Well, the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program has many methods and tools that could solve the North Korean situation peacefully. Katan and I would like to throw out a challenge to all of our viewers. Order any Peaceful Solution book, from the Early Learning series to the well-known and well-renowned advanced series, Building Moral Excellence. Study it, then see for yourself how this world crisis could be solved. In fact, go ahead and email us your answers, and we'll pick out some of the best to read for the rest of our viewers on one of our broadcasts. Learning and applying the Peaceful Solution will be one of the best things you've ever done. To find out more about the Peaceful Solution, you can contact the House of Yahweh, and when you do, remember to request your absolutely free copy of the monthly newsletter and Prophetic Word magazine. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494 or visit them on any of their websites at www.yahweh.com, www.yisraelhawkins.com, or www.yahwehsbranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to www.ypnnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh by going to info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please call the number on your screen. And of course, don't forget the best study resource to the accompanying Holy Scriptures, the Yisrael Says and the Ask Yisrael program, which are also both free programs. You can find those by going to www.yisraelsays.com and www.askyisrael.com.
Well, don't forget to email us your answers, but first, a message from the overseer of the House of Yahweh, Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.